Hello friends and welcome to Miscellany 20 for 2021. I'm Mike Bermingham and this week we see a frozen Niagara Falls, ask how new is the idea of being green, see our capital in pictures from 1930 to 1959 and ask how did we go from that to this. What is that about? We'll find out later. Brainstorm, brain teaser time, where we ask, I'm as light as a feather, yet the strongest man cannot hold me for more than 5 minutes. What is it I'm talking about? What am I? Have a think. Now, some vintage images now. Niagara Falls, a world-renowned location comprising a group of 3 waterfalls at the southern end of Niagara Gorge. This spans the border between the province of Ontario in Canada and the state of New York in the United States. Has it ever frozen over? Is that even possible with the force of water flowing? The answer is a partial yes. And it did happen, as this picture testifies, from 1911. The falls themselves don't completely freeze though, with 3,160 tons of water flowing over Niagara Falls every second. It takes a lot of ice to freeze its waterfall solid. In fact, the falls and Niagara River have never completely frozen in their own right. Still an amazing sight indeed. And now, Earthwatch. Here's an interesting story sent to me recently regarding how the grey-haired have destroyed our planet. Listen on. Checking out at the supermarket, the young cashier suggested to the much older woman that reusable grocery bags were a good idea, and as good idea as plastic bags were not good for the environment. The woman apologised and explained, well, we didn't have the green thing in my earlier days. The young cashier responded, that's our problem today. Your generation did not care enough to save our environment for future generations. Well, she was right. The fact is, our generation didn't have the green thing in its day. Back then, we returned milk bottles, lemonade bottles, and beer bottles to the shop. The shop sent them back to the plant to be washed and sterilised and refilled, so the same bottles could be used over and over again. So they were recycled. But we didn't have the green thing back in our day. Grocery shops bagged our groceries in brown paper bags that were reused for numerous things. Most memorable, beside household bags for rubbish, was the use of brown paper bags as book covers for school books. This was to ensure that public property, the books provided by the school, were not defaced by our scribbling. Then we were able to personalise our books on the brown paper covers. We walked upstairs because we didn't have a lift in every supermarket, shop or office building. We walked to the local shop, and back then we washed the baby's terry toweling nappies because we didn't have the throwaway kind. We dried clothes on a line, not in an energy gobbling machine burning up 3 kilowatts. Wind and solar power really did dry our clothes back in our earlier days. Kids had hand-me-down clothes from their brothers and sisters, not always brand new clothing. Back then we had one radio or TV in the house, not a TV in every room, and the TV had a small screen the size of a big handkerchief. Remember those? Not a screen the size of the Aran Islands in the kitchen. We blended and stirred by hand because we didn't have electric machines to do everything for us. When we packaged a fragile item to be sent in the mail, we used wadded up old newspapers to cushion it, not styrofoam or plastic bubble wrap. Back then we didn't fire up an engine to burn petrol just to cut the lawn, did it by hand. We pushed the mower that ran on human power. We exercised by working, so we didn't need to go to a health club or run on treadmills that operate on electricity. But she's right, we didn't have the green thing back then. We drank from a tap or fountain when we were thirsty instead of using a cup or a plastic bottle every time we had a drink of water. We refilled writing pens with ink instead of buying a new pen, and we replaced the razor blades in a razor instead of throwing away the whole razor just cause the blades got dull. Back then people took the bus and kids rode their bikes to school or walked instead of turning to their mums. We had one electrical outlet in a room, not an entire bank of sockets to power a dozen appliances, and we didn't need a computerized gadget to receive a signal beam from satellites 23,000 miles out in space in order to find the nearest pub. But life can be said. It isn't sad that some of the current generation lament how wasteful we old folks were just because we didn't have the green thing back then. Thanks to Ed McGeoey for sending that one in. Some food for thought in that particular story. The old versus the new. Sometimes they say the more things change, the more things stay the same. Food for thought. Nostalgia. Ireland now. Some events from this week back in time include May 16, 587, St. Brendan the Navigator, early transatlantic voyager, dies. In the liturgical calendar, May 16th is the feast day of St. Brendan. 1952, the birth of Pierce Brosnan in Navan, County Meath. May 17th, 1961, Ethna Ní Brennan, or Enya, is born in Gweedore, County Donegal. 1969, Dubliner Tom McLean crosses from Newfoundland to Blacksod Bay in County Mayo, completing the first transatlantic solo crossing in a rowboat. May 18th, 1939, the first aircraft lands at the newly opened Renana Airfield, which is later to become Shannon International Airport. May 19th, 1961, the birth of composer Ronan Hardiman. May 21st, 1999, the Jack Lynch Tunnel, described as the most challenging civil engineering project in the history of the state, is unveiled by Taoiseach Bertie Ahern at the entrance to the tunnel in Mahon, County Cork. In a 4-part series, we remember old Dublin in a slideshow of nostalgic pictures. This second part is from 1930 to 1959. Next week, we look at the 1960s. Question of the week. How did we go from this to this? Yes, time marches on and some things are familiar, yet some things are so different. First, 70 years of fashion here, from pretty dresses to torn jeans. Politicians and leaders used to appear so dignified, that is until recent times. 100 years of exercise. The first from 1913 was more agricultural, while the second is gymtastic. Tattoos have been around a long time, but they seem to be everywhere these days. Young men's fashion has moved from the zoot suit to the urban rapper look. Computer monitors were massive, and like every tech thingy, they got miniaturized over time. Flying a kite was such innocent fun, but drones, they can go higher and record at the same time. Everybody used to read the papers, now everybody reads their screens. Come in, you're out long enough, versus get off that screen and get some fresh air. Finally, getting a phone call used to be a big deal since homes only had one phone. Now everybody is connected with their own. Thanks to Martin Howard for sending that one in. Video now. The Land Rover, a beautiful example of automotive excellence, and pretty expensive as well. The Defender models that I looked at were 63k and 72k respectively. Well, this showroom must have had a spare one lying around, and sure, while you're at it, why don't you make it into an office?
That is no Range Rover. That's the best I've ever seen, boy, isn't it?
Staying with cars, most new cars feature a digital clock, and this needs to be set to the correct time. I nearly always have to check the manual to do this. And here's one chap who has the manual, but things aren't going very well.
Go to page 265 for general settings. Alright, go to menu. Setup. Alright. General. Clock. What happened to the old-fashioned, the two buttons? You hit the buttons for hours and minutes. No, you gotta work for NASA to change the clock. Because of this daylight saving times. I change struts, I could change spark plugs, I could change a tire, I could do a lot of shit, but to change a simple thing like a clock. You know what? I'll just use my phone to tell the time.
Oh, the poor guy. I feel your pain. The brain teaser answer for this week. I'm as light as a feather. Yeah, the strongest man cannot hold me for more than 5 minutes. What am I? Breath. The final word, quote, or affirmation for this week, words of comfort and inspiration. Stay in the moment. The practice of staying in the present will heal you. Obsessing about how the future will turn out creates anxiety. Replaying broken scenarios from the past causes anger or sadness. So stay here in the moment if you can. Takes a bit of practice, actually. That from S. McNutt. So a couple of things of interest over the last week. Hope you found so as well. As always, we want to thank you for looking in on the show for this week. We're on Instagram, Facebook and YouTube. Until next time, thanks again. Be safe and be well. Look out for one another and talk to you soon.
From the home studio of Michael Bermingham,